Okay, hi there everyone. So we are going to start here with ASP.NET Core 6.0, the latest version that is stable. And we're going to make a tiny project with a very good architecture using Visual Studio and MySQL. I'm just going to start the Visual Studio here. Let's create a new project here. Definitely I'll be creating a MVC project for .NET Core. Now I'll be using 6.0 here. Okay, now we have the application. You see the architecture here. We have the controllers, model, and mules. Those who have a prerequisite of ASP.NET Core are aware of this MVC architecture. Next, we are going to make a very nice design pattern here. So we'll be creating multiple layers of project here. So I'll be adding a new project here as a class library because I will just be needing the classes in there. Again, I'll be selecting 6.0. Next, we have the name, that is, I'll be making one the data access layer so that we have all the connectivities there. And also I'll be making one business access layer so that we have all the services and interfaces in that. Here we go. Okay. Next, we will add one more project for the utility layer. I'll be using the common library, a custom common library, which I'll be constructing in this utility layer, and I'll be using it all over the project whenever it's necessary. Next, very necessary, we'll be adding one more project for the models, again in 6.0. Here we go. Okay, I'll not be needing this class file, so I'll be just removing the garbages. Now you see that we have a very nice architecture here. We have the application, which will be using the different layers in different scenarios. So the application is going to use the business layer, and the business layer is going to use the data layer. The data layer will be using the models to get some data from the connection string. And also we have the functions or methods. Next, we have this utility, and this will help us to reduce the line of code if there are going to be used multiple places, same function or actions that are to be executed. Okay, keeping it short, I will be just explaining to you the major part here. Just before we get started, we have the controllers here. We have the controllers, multiple methods that are going to be returning a page that is a view, which are stored in this folder according to the controllers method name folder. So you can see if we have the home, then you must be having the home controller, and inside that you must be having this index method. Next, we have the properties, launch settings. This is nothing but just being used by the Visual Studio. That is what is the port that is the application is going to run if the environment is development. What is the command name for the IIS Express that are going to be executed. Next, we have the models. Models is nothing that are kind of a class that are with different attributes, different data type that are to be used at a place wherever necessary. So I'll be explaining it to you in a better way of the models. Then we have the shared folder. Inside this, we have the layout. Layout is the code which is going to be called on every view page by default if the layout is not defined. This is somewhat like you can say that the header and the footer part, and you are going to make the content part dynamic. So this is going to be the method which is responsible for that. Now we have the validation scripts partial. In this, we have the scripts of JavaScript files that are responsible for the validation at the client side. You must recognize some keywords here that we have the jQuery. jQuery have one library for validating the forms. Next, we have the error page. This is the default page if your code gets exploded in short, or we can say if there is an exception, you can just return this error page just to avoid showing the actual error to the user. Next, we have the view inputs. This is something like you can have the namespaces defined here that you need to use on every controller or every services. I mean, you don't need to type application.models everywhere on every class file. You can just define it in here, view imports, and you'll be using it according to that. Next is we have the view start. Now we have this view start. View start is a file which has the logic which gets applied to every view. That is, you can say that if the layout is not defined, here is the layout that are going to be used. Whatever the layout will be having, I mean, by this name, this will be getting used on all the pages if the layout is not defined. Next, we have the triple W root. We have different CSS, JS, and library files. So as an overview, this is all the hierarchy that is being displayed here. At last but not the least, the main file that is the entry point of every ASP.NET Core application is program.cs file. Here you'll be having different methods for the application to be built in an order with having some kind of configurations in that. So we have the services add controller views. So the controller with the views are going to be used in here. We have the build function that builds it. Then we are checking here if the environment is not development, that it is going to use an exception handler that I just told you that it is going to return to a specific page if the error occurs. Now we have the HTTPS redirection, static files, routing, authorization. This is somewhat similar to the .NET MVC. This is not very much different, just we have the different type of notations here. We do not have the configure services and configure here. We just have all the things defined into one variable, and that variable is just set to run. Now we are going to set up the whole project, and we're going to be using MySQL because this is an open source and people can try it out for free. They can build the application and deploy it for free because MySQL is an open source and SQL does cost too much on the production. And you don't really have very much different in terms of queries being written. The syntax are a bit almost same, so you won't have much trouble. So let's get started.